Hey everybody, Nano Reef Freak here. In today's video, I want to talk about why you shouldn't necessarily put corals in your reef tank on day one. Even if you have established media and established bacteria in a bottle, it can still be risky, and here's why. Your tank is going to go through the nitrogen cycle, which we all know. If you don't know about the nitrogen cycle, go and do a quick Google search and come back to this video. I'm just going to assume that you already know a lot about the nitrogen cycle and what that is and how it's converting waste to ammonia. So when your tank is going through the nitrogen cycle and you're converting that waste into ammonia, it's going to consume alkalinity. So this here is my BioCube 14 gallon. When I first started this tank up back on June 8th, the first week we mixed all the salt, put all the water in, did all the new tank stuff. The alkalinity in that tank on day one was 8. So alkalinity of 8 is what my salt mix mixes at. I'm using the Red Sea Blue bucket. If you're using the Instant Ocean bucket, that also mixes around an 8. Within a week, my alkalinity dropped. So I've got my notes here on my phone. So my alkalinity dropped to 6.9 from an alkalinity of 8 in that first week. Once I detected that the alkalinity had dropped to 6.9, I started dosing Alpha Reef to try and combat that alkalinity drop. Dosing Alpha Reef, I put 2.5 milliliters, milliliters. Dosing Alpha Reef, I put 2.5 milliliters back in the tank, and that brought my alkalinity back up to 7.2. Now, throughout that second and third week, I was continually dosing Alpha Reef. I went down to about 0.5 ml a day. So instead of doing that 2.5 ml, I went down to just 0.5 ml, and doing 0.5 ml a day was only maintaining my alkalinity at around 7.4. So we were unable to get back up to that 8.0 alkalinity. Now, if I had dosed more, if I had dosed like 1 milliliter every day or 2 milliliters every day, I probably could have got past 8 or even higher, but I didn't want to be too aggressive with the alkalinity swings. I try and aim for consistency rather than just the correct parameters. So once you start keeping higher end corals, you'll start to realize that if I just do a water change and get perfect parameters, it'll actually hurt the coral more than if I did smaller water changes and had the parameters slowly getting better over time rather than it being bad and then shooting back up to this perfect level, which will shock your corals. So when you're setting up a new tank like this, even when I set up my Innovative Marine Nuvo 25 gallon, just did a video on that recently, that alkalinity dropped to 6.2 from 8 in the first 2 weeks. So essentially we're seeing the tank get set up at 8, we're seeing a spike down to about 6, 6.2, and then we're seeing a spike back up to about 7 when we're starting to dose Alpha Reef and things like that. So when you're first setting up your tank, you're gonna have a lot of problems with alkalinity fluctuating, which is really gonna be the #1 enemy for your corals, because the #1 thing that corals want is stability. Without that stability, your corals aren't gonna grow, they're not gonna open up very much. So stability is key. So what exactly makes that BioCube different from my established Fluval Evo 13.5 aquarium, which I've had set up for many, many years, if I'm taking biological media from the Fluval and putting it into the BioCube to jumpstart the BioCube? The difference is that this Fluval Evo 13.5 has food delivered on a regular schedule. What that means is that the fish are eating the food, converting it into ammonia, which is their waste, and then the ammonia is being converted by nitrifying bacteria in the aquarium into nitrite and nitrate. That process of converting ammonia uses alkalinity. It's literally an equation that you can read about online where there's a certain amount of alkalinity that is needed to convert ammonia to nitrite to nitrate. What's happening in a new tank like the BioCube over there is when I have established media from another tank, there's no way to tell how much bacteria you have on there. Now, depending on how much food you're putting in your new aquarium and how many fish you're adding and how much coral you're adding in such a short amount of time is going to determine how much bacteria you need. So let's imagine for a moment that, you know, one bioball or one ceramic piece of media from this aquarium had 50, bacteria on it, or 1 million or something like that. Some value, 1,000, 100,000, something like that. And let's say we set up a brand new tank and we put a small, tiny little damselfish like this in it, and we're putting 1 mysis shrimp in there a day to feed them or something like this, right? We could, in theory, have that 1 or maybe 2 ceramic pearls in that aquarium as filtration, and it would be able to probably handle that 1 fish and 1 mysis shrimp a day because it's not that much ammonia. Now, if we take 10 or 15 pieces from this aquarium, put it in a brand new one, and we add 10 or 15 fish, there's no way that bacteria is going to be able to keep up with that much fish. So ideally, to instant cycle a new tank, you would want to have a full set of biological media, something like a very large portion like you see in this tank filter. We want to have a big set of biological media that is already pre-established, put it in a new aquarium, maybe add like 1 or 2 fish at most. As a new reef keeper, you may accidentally overfeed your tank, and even if you have established biological media, that overfeeding of the tank is going to produce an excess amount of ammonia, which is going to take your alkalinity to convert that ammonia to nitrate through the nitrogen cycle. So ultimately, I wouldn't really recommend instant cycling a tank. If you see me doing it in my videos, it's because I'm very careful. I know that the bacteria that I'm using and the filter media I'm using is very well established, and that I'm adding corals and fish very slowly to my tanks. But someone who might have added, 2 clownfish and an anemone and some coral is going to have a really tough time, because suddenly they're going to need a lot of biological bacteria put in that tank. And this isn't even taking into account things like your sand bed, which isn't established yet, things like your rockscape, which maybe your rocks might have some bacteria on them, but they really need to get covered in that bacteria, because that's half your filtration right there. So during the first probably 3 to 4 weeks, I would say no coral for your reef tank. Now, if you have established media, bacteria in a bottle, live rock from another tank, all these good things, you could in theory put fish in there if you're keeping your ammonia low. I only put fish in my reef tanks when I have established media and established live rock from another system. If I just have bacteria in a bottle, it's a little bit more risky. I would definitely be very careful. And if you do add fish, which is not what I advise, but if you do, you definitely want to stick to a hardier fish like a damsel or a clownfish. Just keep in mind that fish like damsels are very aggressive. They do get a little big for nano tanks like these, so they will force out other fish in the future if you're trying to put more docile fish in there later on in the aquarium's life cycle. Now, the reason I bring this up is Reef Dork recently made a video about setting up an aquarium and putting fish and corals in there within the first 48 hours, which I think is an awesome concept, especially to educate people on how to do it right. And I agree with all the things he said in there. And he makes a lot of great points about pest allergies and things like that. So definitely go check out his video. But just something that I've learned is that alkalinity is one of those parameters where a lot of new reefers aren't measuring it and they aren't testing for it, and they don't realize how much it can swing during the first months that your aquarium is set up as it's getting established and going through that nitrogen cycle and converting the waste to ammonia. So definitely keep an eye on your alkalinity, guys. If you need a way to test your alkalinity, I'd recommend the Hanna checkers. I used a Hanna Alkalinity DKH checker, not sponsored, just what I happen to use. I bought it with my own money and I happen to love it. Gives you a reading in about a minute or so, because all you got to do is fill up the water, put it in there, hit a button, put some additive in there, some reagent, hit the button again, and you're ready to go. Ultimately, my official recommendation is to allow your tank to cycle for at least a month before you add anything to it. After that month, you can add your fish. Once you've given your tank a couple months, you can start adding beginner corals, and then ultimately you can add things like anemones and higher to keep corals. Usually you'll also start with a basic light like this one here, and you'll eventually want to upgrade. So we do have some lighting upgrades coming in for our other aquariums on the channel. And if you guys haven't seen those, please check out my other videos. But overall, if you're new to the reef keeping hobby and you're trying to instant cycle a tank, even if you get some media from your buddy's tank, be very careful when you're adding fish or corals to that tank within the first couple weeks. Definitely test your ammonia every day. Definitely keep an eye on your alkalinity, and even think about things like pH. In this video, we didn't even discuss pH, but alkalinity directly affects pH. So if your alkalinity is fluctuating and swinging, your pH is also going to be fluctuating and swinging, causing a harsher environment for your corals and fish as well. And ultimately, those swings in alkalinity and pH are going to cause tons of problems for people that are setting up new aquariums and trying to add fish and corals in the first week or two. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope it helps you if you're new to the reef keeping hobby. I make lots of great videos on my channel about reef keeping and about my experience with my aquariums. So if you'd like to learn from me, please subscribe. And if you want to help me out with the algorithm, please leave a like or a comment below.